This program contains graphic material, including offensive language. Viewer discretion is advised. They've blazed a bloody trail.
They put the fear of God in people.
The on, and we need to go strap up.
They're a mob-like gang of killers.
They're an actual organized crime family. We refer to them as the Sopranos on motorcycles.
With a vicious dictator at their center.
He is probably in the top 2 or 3 most evil people I have ever arrested.
John Napoli was a gangster.
They're the Breed Motorcycle Club, and they'll stop at nothing.
I don't think we even gave a just don't with us.
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The Cradle of Liberty is the nation's 6th largest city. Its nickname, the City of Brotherly Love, suggests kindness and a generous spirit. But this otherwise peaceful city has a major problem. Outlaw biker gangs. The Warlocks, the Pagans, and even the notorious Hell's Angels all wreak havoc here. There's one gang that is more violent and ruthless than all the rest. The Breed.
Every single person in it was absolute maniac and dangerous as they came.
The gang's headquarters are 22 miles from downtown Philly in Bristol Township. The Breed may be the most secretive biker gang in the country, and just speaking about the gang to anyone can mean death. Big P asked to have his identity concealed.
Every single time that we were out, there's drugs, alcohol, pretty girls, and Breed members. It's just a combination that usually results into something bad for somebody.
Big P was just back from Vietnam when he joined the gang in 1971.
Most of the time he ran into people that had something bad to say about the Vietnam War, and I was the bad guy.
The Breed formed in 1965 and quickly gained a reputation as the most violent gang in the Philly area.
Everybody knows the Breed, knows of the Breed, and the reputation of the Breed as being violent, don't mess with them.
The gang's standard operating procedure: eliminate everyone. Jeff Antonucci spent 10 years battling the Breed.
They would hang out in the bars and approach the owners of the bars. They wanted to get paid, and if the bar owners or the businesses balked at that, they would bring their club members and take over the entire establishment.
Not all confrontations were about extortion. Some were just for fun.
Some idiot comes in the bar, he goes, "Which one of you bikers are Wale?" The whole bar, they just said, "We all are," and they proceeded to beat this guy's head in. Never found out who was the guy's old lady.
The Breed is smaller than mammoth clubs like the Hell's Angels, but their 200 members are spread across the Northeast and Midwest. And they don't let their size hold them back.
If you look at a club like the Hells Angels or the Outlaws or the Pagans, they come with mass numbers. There's thousands of them. The Breed doesn't have that amount of numbers, so they need to gain respect in other ways. Beatings, assaults, firebombings.
They call the Philly area home and are willing to defend their turf at any cost.
It didn't matter if you were a larger club or a nationally recognized club. If you came through that area and they didn't know about it, they would confront you.
Many take any challenge personally.
I think what makes the breed different is that they're a homegrown club. They live and die where a lot of them were raised and born.
This also plays into their secret culture. Usually friends of friends are selected to join.
If you look at that whole club, they're all pretty tight-knit. Nobody's really from far away.
Smokey asked to have his identity concealed. He'd always wanted to be a biker.
If I was going to join a club, it was going to be the Hells Angels because, you know, growing up, you always heard of the Hells Angels, the Hells Angels. That's what I wanted.
Smokey changed his mind about joining the Angels shortly after he opened his own motorcycle shop.
The day I opened the shop might have been the worst day of my life, actually.
It was the day Smokey met the leader of the breed. John Jr. Napoli was vice president of the Pennsylvania chapter of the breed for 4 years.
He come down to my shop and said, I heard you're joining the Hells Angels. And I said, it doesn't matter who I join. He goes, well, you're not going to join the Hells Angels and have a business in my area.
Napoli had built himself a ruthless reputation.
Napoli's reputation in Bristol was don't mess with Napoli.
By 1995, Napoli had already been in and out of prison.
Stabbing, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. He did 4 years in state prison for that crime.
Just a young thunderhead. Always looking for some kind of excitement to do.
Napoli grew up around the gang. His dad, Harry, was an original member. But John was a different type of biker.
He doesn't have the typical biker persona. He's not tattooed. He doesn't have a long beard. He doesn't have a ponytail. And he very rarely rode a motorcycle.
But Napoli's ambition made him a force to be reckoned with.
I think John Napoli wanted to be more of a mobster than a biker. The breed gave him the mechanism and the tool and the backing to do what he wanted to do.
Napoli wanted absolute power. As soon as he became a member of the breed, he started angling to be a chapter president.
John Napoli increased the levels of violence greatly, and that many of his actions were done to put that message out that the breed should be feared.
He started taking substantial steps toward that. He was involved in a couple vicious assaults on civilians.
Kirk Schwartz asked to have his identity concealed.
He ran it like a mobster by insulating himself and isolating himself. If you look back at the mafia cases of the past century, they were typically the same.
There was a method to Napoli's madness. He wanted the breed to take control of crystal meth trafficking in North Philly. They were already selling in Bristol, but Junior saw the opportunity to make millions. To do it, he would take out anyone who stood in his way. January 2003. Thomas Burke was a breed prospect. As a recruit, he had to follow the orders of full members or risk their wrath. John Napoli asked Burke to deliver a half-pound of crystal meth to a customer in New Jersey. Burke refused, breaking the cardinal rule for a prospect.
John Napoli wanted him to do some specific things, and Thomas Burke balked at it.
Napoli was furious. He would teach Burke a lesson. March 8th. Burke was invited to John Napoli's house. There, he was cornered by 3 breed members. They beat Burke, viciously kicking and stomping him until he passed out.
He woke back up. He tried to regain his composure, and at that time, Napoli attacked him again with a cordless drill and began putting drywall screws in his arm.
Burke passed out again. Then, Napoli took it one step further. He doused Burke with lighter fluid. Then, he took out a lighter.
He was going to set him on fire inside his own house until he was stopped by one of the other members who said, "John, you're going to burn your own house down." And that's the only thing that prevented that.
Burke barely survived the attack, but he refused to file charges, fearing for his life. Napoli had thrown down the gauntlet. It was either his way or a vicious beating.
I think they were so loyal because they feared him. They saw what John Napoli was capable of. They did not want to be on the receiving end of what John Napoli was capable of giving them.
Philadelphia has a proud working-class history. But the city is home to some of the East Coast's most violent nonconformists. The Breed Outlaw Motorcycle Gang. These brutal bikers take pride in scaring everyone.
They put the fear of God in people, and that's what they did. They terrorized. They terrorized.
Intimidation has been integral to the gang from the beginning. The Breed was born in 1965 in Asbury Park, New Jersey, about 64 miles northeast of Philly.
If you talk to the Breed members, they're just a bunch of motorcycle enthusiasts who don't necessarily conform to society. If you look at it from an law enforcement standpoint, they were an organized group of vicious people, and anybody who stood in their way, they would confront them and use violence.
One of their founding members was Salvatore DiIulio, also known as the Old Man. To this day, DiIulio inspires almost cult-like devotion.
The Old Man is capable of almost a Manson-like attachment to somebody. You got a lot of people that gravitated towards the guy.
DiIulio had a volcanic temper that often got the better of him.
Crossing the Old Man is not necessarily a good idea. You might just get punched in the mouth. You might go to the hospital.
By 1971, the Breed had grown to 1,500 members, and DiIulio was officially made the national president. The gang embraced the outlaw image, riding Harleys and fighting wherever they went.
I remember a guy, grown man, in shorts, come into the bar, interrupting 2 Breed members speaking. We beat the out of the guy and threw him outside.
The Breed also sold and used methamphetamine.
We're making money, we're having a good time, and we're certainly whacked out of our minds. We could party, drink, keep partying, drink, do some more partying, drink, as long as you pretty much wanted to.
Many early recruits, like Big P, were Vietnam vets who had trouble readjusting to civilian life.
The lifestyle is really boiled down to that. We're just not going to take any.
They had expanded beyond Jersey and established 13 chapters. from West Virginia to Ohio. In Ohio, they started to butt heads with the country's largest and most powerful motorcycle gang, the Hells Angels.
The breed chapters in Ohio were leaning on the Hells Angels, and were actually doing quite a good job of it.
What began as bar brawls soon escalated and turned into an all-out war after an incident in Cleveland, Ohio. March 7th, 1971. About 150 breed members and 24 Hells Angels showed up to the 4th annual Motorcycle Custom and Trade Show. The Angels prepared for the inevitable battle.
They knew that the breed was going to be there in force. They came in the night before, and behind the stage put all sorts of weapons, guns, clubs, knives.
When the breed showed up the next day, security wouldn't let them in with weapons.
The Hells Angels were very smart about it. They set the breed up and cornered them.
The battle was brutal. It lasted just 2 minutes, but 4 breed members and 1 Hells Angel lay dead. 2 other members of the breed were castrated by the Angels during the melee. The battle was the bloodiest in biker history, and the war wasn't over.
We're now formally at war with the Hells Angels. The shit's on, and we need to go strap up.
In the 80s and early 90s, instead of expanding like most gangs, the breed chose to strengthen its presence in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. They did so through an unprecedented campaign of violence.
At one point, about 35 members of the gang walked into the Blue Fountain Diner, and they confronted a gentleman inside, asked him if he was enjoying his breakfast, and then began beating on him and broke a beer bottle over his head. 2 off-duty policemen were also severely beaten during the brawl.
Police weren't the only targets. January 1998. Stars and Bars, Long Branch, New Jersey. This strip club had become the breed's hangout.
Well, the breed could come into that bar on Friday night. They would have the dancing girls there or whatever.
Mike Campanella worked undercover for 2 years tailing the breed. He says National Breed President Salvatore the Old Man DiIulio was acting like he owned the place and allegedly abusing some of the dancers.
If the old man, Sal DiIulio, wanted a girl in the back room or whatever he wanted to do, he put an order out, and these guys would make girls come back there.
The gang had become bad for business.
They flat out would take them in the back room, tie them up, and have a great old time. The stuff that a lot of people fantasize about.
Then the gang went too far.
Every time the music stops, the patrons are listening to screams from the back room.
One of the dancers was beat up so brutally that she lost her teeth. She was chained to a chair. She was made to perform oral sex on members of the breed. Ultimately, later that night, was taken to the hospital and told not to say anything to the police or you'll find yourself dead.
The abused dancer eventually went to the police anyway. The old man and 4 other breed members were arrested and charged with sexual assault. In the end, 1 breed member pled guilty. The old man and 3 other breed members were never tried for sexual assault. John Jr. Napoli would take the message to heart.
He would do whatever he needed to. If that meant putting a drywall screw in your arm or burning you, he would do it.
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The outlaw biker gang, The Breed, rules this blue-collar area with intimidation and brute force.
They had a mission. They wanted people to fear them.
To gain that fear, Breed members operate as a unified force. Absolute loyalty is demanded from its members. No exceptions.
They stand beside each other through thick and thin. It doesn't matter if you're in a fist fight or a knife fight or a gunfight, they expect you to stand next to each other.
The gang's guiding principles, which they call their bylaws, were in part created by Breed founder Salvatore "the Old Man" DiIulio.
It all boils down to the fact that you have to love the lifestyle, you have to love the motorcycles, and more importantly, you have to love your brothers.
Even more importantly, you have to be willing to TCB. By committing crimes and following gang mandates to move more meth.
They're not afraid to commit whatever crime they need to commit to do what they want to do. Whatever their particular goal is for that day, whether it is they're going to go out and get drunk and beat somebody up because it serves their purpose, that's what they're going to do.
The gang's hierarchy includes chapter presidents and vice presidents, a sergeant-at-arms in charge of protecting gang members, and the treasurer. Overseeing it all is the National Breed president, who is still the old man, Salvatore DiIulio.
Everything is insulated in their criminal activity in that a soldier may receive orders that's coming from the president, but he doesn't talk directly to the president. The president talks to his trusted people who relay the information further down to the club members who receive instructions on what it is they're supposed to do, and they do it without question.
You pledge allegiance to the club when you join the Breed by taking an oath. Only then do you earn its colors.
There's the top rocker, which displays the name of the club, the center patch, which is the 13-star American flag, and the bottom rocker, which is the territory of which that particular member is associated with.
That's to be your most prized possession. They care more about their colors than anything.
The center patch is a U.S. flag with 13 stars to symbolize their 13 chapters when they were at their largest. Sometimes a black bar is placed across the flag to honor fallen brothers. To get his colors, a biker has to go through a rigorous rite of passage designed to weed out the weak. During this time, he's referred to as a prospect.
Once you're a prospect, you had to do anything a Breed member asked you to do, whether it be something illegal, a crime.
They were asked to transport drugs, store drugs, sometimes put their name to make things appear to be more legitimate, such as renting storage locations, on vehicles, on weapon registrations.
There is no set time limit for how long prospecting lasts.
Well, for some reason it wasn't that difficult for me. I had my flag gun in 5 weeks. I've seen some prospects be prospects for almost a year and a half, 2 years, because they just didn't get it.
Once a prospect is voted in, he gets his colors and is considered a full member or flag holder. And once you're in the gang, there is no easy way out. The gang's creed: breed forever and forever breed.
If you want to leave the Breed motorcycle gang, you have to have a real good reason and put a request in. If if the request is valid, you can get out of the breed. But on normal circumstances, you're catching a beating.
Instead of the traditional 1% diamond patch, the breed models theirs after a woman.
The breed class patch is the breed's 1%er patch.
The gang refers to women as old ladies and thinks of them as property.
A lot of the old ladies would wear a designation that says that I'm the property of Junior or I'm the property of Kicker. If a particular woman is wearing a belt or a patch, that she's the particular property of a particular club member, the other club members know to leave her alone. Anybody else is fair game.
The breed's children wear patches too.
Your kids, they actually have product patches. And so somebody says, whose child is that running by? Oh, that's Steve's, because it says product of Steve. So they say, well, hey Steve, you want to get over here and get your f***ing kid out of here?
The gang has other rules as well, including attending church. Church takes place at the gang's clubhouse.
We had a steel door on the outside, and in the back, they had a great big party pit. When you went inside, there was a big bar and refrigerators and a big cooking stove on the inside, and the rest of it on the second floor was sleeping quarters where some of the club members actually lived.
The clubhouse is the site of meetings, but more importantly, it's the site of breed parties fueled by meth.
Methamphetamine was pretty much the drug of choice. It got you up and partying. You could get drunk, do a line of crank, start drinking all over again. Could go on for 3, 4, 5 days.
Not only do breed members use meth, they also sell it to finance their operation.
I've been in Allentown for 10 years, and several years ago, 8 or 9 years ago, we did a methamphetamine investigation which led right to their door. They were selling methamphetamine on a regular basis. It's their main means of income.
In early 2002, the U.S. Department of Justice reported that the breed was one of the most active methamphetamine distributors in New Jersey. By 2003, the breed were making enough money that they were more profitable than gangs twice and 3 times their size. John Junior Napoli was making sure of that.
John Napoli wanted to create a methamphetamine empire because the profit margins are substantially higher.
John Napoli was in the right time in the right place to become the king of crystal meth.
March 2003. In the Philly area, John Junior Napoli was gunning to be president of the breed's Pennsylvania chapter.
John Napoli was a gangster. There was never a single issue of remorse or anything heartfelt or anything repentant about him.
He had built a reputation on violence. Napoli nearly killed Thomas Burke, a breed prospect, for refusing to do a crystal meth delivery. Now he wanted to take out the Pennsylvania chapter's sitting president, James Graber.
Napoli didn't like the way Graber ran the club. Graber wasn't about the violence and the mass methamphetamine trafficking that Napoli was undertaking. They had different philosophies about the breed and what it stood for.
In November of the same year, Graber decided to do the wise thing.
He realized that if he didn't step aside, that he was going to be forced to step aside, because Napoli made it very clear he wanted to be president of that chapter.
Napoli was appointed president of the breed's Pennsylvania chapter. But it wasn't enough that Graber was no longer president. John Napoli wanted him erased. November 24th, 2005. Under the guise of a meeting, Napoli and several other breed members lured Graber to the gang's headquarters.
When he got there, they proceeded to savagely beat him with pull sticks and boots and knives. Napoli basically scalped him.
At one point, he used a screwdriver to stab him in the head. Graber had puncture wounds to his head. He had a punctured lung.
Graber barely survived. Napoli stripped the 25-year breed veteran of his colors and kicked him out of the gang.
I've been around a lot of things and a lot of clubs and never seen just the brutality of what he does.
The Pennsylvania Attorney General's office took notice of the bloody coup.
Napoli was to become more and more violent with his own members, and they were taking more chances.
These guys were out of control, and they needed to be dealt with.
In the same year, Agent Jeff Antonucci was assigned to supervise an operation designed to take the breed down. Since the breed's victims were usually too afraid to testify against them, authorities decided to nail the gang for their methamphetamine activities. But they knew it wouldn't happen overnight.
Our operation was officially titled Breed on a Wire.
Napoli revealed his lust for violence through wiretapped conversations.
You don't get to my tattoo shop and cover it up. I don't give a who we got in that club. I'm gonna cut his arm off, all right?
Napoli was usually very careful about how he ran his operation, but the state attorney general was onto him.
It was all about insulating themselves. John Napoli got to a point where he believed that if he didn't touch the methamphetamine, if he didn't handle it, he was isolated, and prosecution of him was going to be that much more difficult.
After a few months, authorities started making progress. They identified Napoli's most trusted foot soldier.
His club name was Tattoo Billy, and he was actually working his way quickly up the ladder of the club. He looked like, at the time during our investigation, he was next in line to be vice president of the club. And he took his instructions from John Napoli.
Tattoo Billy, by all accounts, he was John Napoli's right-hand man.
William Johnson, aka Tattoo Billy, owned a shop just outside Bristol called the House of 1,000 Tattoos.
That was a place where Napoli and Johnson met frequently. We believed it was, for the most part, a front to launder money.
Billy actually talked to the suppliers and arranged the deliveries and worked out the exchange of the money. And Billy might only have the actual meth in his hands for an hour.
The breed was rolling in money.
The profit margin that they were making was phenomenal. John Napoli was in control of millions and millions of dollars worth of crystal meth.
Napoli had realized his dream. He was living the life of a mobster.
We described John Napoli and the breed as the Sopranos on motorcycles because that's how he ran the organization.
The case was coming together, but authorities knew they needed an informant willing to testify. They saw the chance to make it happen in 2005.
That's when life changed.
In May, police raided the shop of local mechanic and breed associate, Smokey. They busted him for possession of 3 ounces of meth.
They told me what I was facing and then asked me if I'd be willing to cooperate.
Before he could decide, Napoli himself paid Smokey a visit. He knew the feds had been there before him.
Junior pulls me out back and goes, if you work with the police, if I find out you're cooperating, I will blow your head off. As soon as he drove away, I called up, I said, let's get rocking. Let's go.
With Smokey on board, the agents began using him to make meth buys from Breed members. But Smokey knew with Napoli, one slip-up meant he was as good as dead.
I had to be afraid every day being around him because he should look for that one flaw in what you say and use it against you. Wind up killing you.
Just months into the investigation, authorities got a critical break.
We knew from the telephone calls that there was a pending delivery on Monday, June 5th.
We were anticipating a major delivery of methamphetamine to Billy Johnson.
That large transaction was 5 pounds of crystal meth, worth approximately $100,000. Antonucci and his team sprung into action.
We had an airplane up, everything was clear, the radio communications were good.
Jackson, stay with the pickup truck.
We had a lot of people on the street, and we literally
SUV just pulled up. Johnson down with the passenger side of the vehicle.
tagged Billy Johnson and followed him the entire day.
Where they're taking what they got.
June 5th, 2006, 5:05 p.m. Tattoo Billy Johnson and his connection met at Morrell Avenue, and with authorities watching, exchanged packages.
Target vehicle.
Just after 5:50 p.m., Tattoo Billy returned home.
Yeah, pickup trucks at the intersection of Morrell.
We videotaped Johnson getting out carrying a shoebox.
Color bag. He set it on the front steps of the house.
The box contained 5 pounds of crystal meth, which police would later seize. Later that day, authorities would arrest Tattoo Billy's supplier and confiscate the $100,000 he'd used to buy the drugs. Ironically, the money was stashed in a DVD box of The Sopranos television series.
Johnson made the exchange of money in a box that he had tucked under his arm that it was a Sopranos movie box.
This was enough evidence to secure search warrants for the Breed's properties. When John Napoli heard about the raids, he was furious. He knew that there had to be a snitch and immediately suspected an inside job. Napoli summoned Smokey to his home. Fearing he was a suspect, Smokey called the authorities.
He said, look, he wants me to come down there. And they're like, no, don't go down there. I said, dude, if I show up, they're not going to think I had enough balls to show up there and do it.
Smokey went to Napoli's house. When he arrived, Tattoo Billy and 4 other members were sitting around a table talking.
Junior was trying to figure out who was the one that ran it. He just kicked out a few people's names.
Smokey's life hung in the balance.
And I had to sit across the table knowing that these guys, I know they'd kill me in a minute.
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Police had built a case against the Breed and their leader, John Jr. Napoli, with the help of a secret informant. Napoli smelled a rat and called a meeting at his home to peg the snitch.
Now, I'll tell you what, I was nervous through the whole thing. Well, I was sweating. Yeah, I thought I was done.
John Napoli never turned on Smokey, and he walked out of Napoli's house. The Pennsylvania Attorney General's office decided it was time to move in.
We acquired search warrants for 13 different locations, including residences of the Breed and the Breed Clubhouse.
Later that day, a task force of 100 officers raided numerous breed properties, including the home of John Jr. Napoli.
We seized 22 pounds of crystal methamphetamine, and the wholesale street value of that was about $2.2 million.
We see somewhere around 100 firearms, including fully automatic machine guns, sawed-off shotguns. We seized somewhere around $500,000 in cash.
John Napoli and 14 other breed members, including Tattoo Billy, were arrested and charged with drug distribution. Their crystal meth ring, which had become a $6 million a year business, was shut down overnight. It was the biggest operation of its kind ever run by an outlaw motorcycle gang.
When Napoli took over the club, he turned the club into an organized crime family. I believe that's how he ran it. I believe that's what he wanted to do, and that's ultimately what he did.
In 2007, Napoli was convicted of conspiracy to distribute crystal meth, violent acts in the aid of racketeering, extortion, and 3 counts of possession of firearms. He remained defiant to the end.
The judge who was about to sentence him asked him if he had any words, and John stood up and looked the judge square in the eyes and said, "I got nothing to say to you."
Of the 15 breed members sentenced, Napoli received the stiffest punishment, 36 years in prison. In the end, many of Napoli's breed brothers ended up testifying against him.
John Napoli's ultimate downfall was his own ego. I don't think Napoli ever got the fact or the true meaning of what bikers were all about. He didn't support the brotherhood and treat those guys like they were a family. He treated them like they were expendable. And I think they realized it, and they were going to look out for themselves.
The last breed member standing was the national president, Salvatore "the Old Man" DiIulio. Many say he still has a hand in running the gang.
The old man runs everything. The old man runs everything. Everything goes by the old man. You know, whatever it is, it goes by him. That's what I know.
He's held the position for nearly 40 years. But many others have walked away. Big P says the gang's best days are in the past.
Half of the breed's ex-members are in other motorcycle clubs now, and all you have left are the hardcore drug addicts and people that are still entranced by Sal DiIulio.
Big P thinks there's only one way for the gang to change its fortunes.
Probably have to get rid of the old man. I mean, if they were going to do that, but the future's already, you know, unfolding for the breed.
The Pennsylvania Attorney General's office says the gang is far from dead. They believe the breed is rebuilding.
I think that as long as there are people who are dysfunctional and want to belong, but want to stay on the outside of society, the breed will be back.
They have reorganized. They have new prospects that they acquired. They still have for their monthly meetings. I think that they're still a criminal organization. I think they're absolutely still dangerous.
Smokey doesn't associate with the breed anymore and is trying to get his life back.
I'm off meth. Life's together the best it's ever been.
But he still fears retribution from the breed and John Napoli.
Yeah, Napoli wants to get to me, absolutely. You know, like I'm sitting in this chair right now, but I ain't no good to anybody. I know his plan. I know how he works. He'll get me eventually.